Brooklyn Independent Television.
Welcome to Brooklyn Review. I'm Brian Vines. The U.S. Census is supposed to give an accurate representation of population growths and shifts in towns and cities across America. Those numbers are used to divide federal funds and determine political representation. But in 2010, Mayor Bloomberg and other elected officials say the numbers are anything but accurate. And Sherry Karabin takes a look at how an undercount could affect Brooklyn and New York City.
It's obviously flawed and wrong.
That's how many elected officials feel about the results of the 2010 census. It shows just over a 2% growth rate in New York City's population since 2000. This despite the fact that the overall response rate among New Yorkers is said to have gone up, leaving people wondering how the numbers could be so low. The main problems occurred in Queens and Brooklyn.
Here in Fort Greene, the numbers have grown, obviously, as the result of the development. There's been a lot of zoning changes, particularly in Flatbush Avenue, as you know, particularly in downtown Brooklyn. I can count on, at last count, there were at least 11 new developments, totaling about over 5,000 individuals in downtown Brooklyn. And to say that we lost population is just wrong.
Fort Greene is only one of the neighborhoods where there is believed to have been growth.
If you just take the Hasidic Jewish population in Williamsburg and in Crown Heights, believe me, just between those two communities, you had an increase of 40,000. Something is drastically wrong. We've grown by leaps and bounds in neighborhoods that had very little population. Dumbo in the year 2000 had very few people. Fourth Avenue, as a residential complex, very few people.
Councilman Vincent Gentile says there was also an undercount in South Brooklyn. High vacancy rates were reported in neighborhoods like Brighton Beach, Bensonhurst, Dyker Heights, and Bay Ridge.
3 of the hard-to-count areas in Brooklyn that we looked at, 2 of those were more successful in North Central Brooklyn and Southern Brooklyn than Sunset Park. Sunset Park, the response rate actually went down.
Gretchen MANEVAL is the director of the Center for the Study of Brooklyn at Brooklyn College.
The undercounted areas tend to be areas where there are high immigrant population, lower income population, racial minorities, and so that is, of course, of concern because those may be some of the very populations that need services and need funding dollars and programming more.
As MANEVAL explains it, there are 2 ways that data are gathered. The Population Estimates Program, which puts out the American Community Survey annually, and the decennial census count that happens every 10 years. The annual Community Survey information is used to direct money to neighborhoods during periods between each census. The census itself decides both political representation and funding allocations. MANEVAL says the most recent American Community Survey shows numbers that are higher than those that were reported in the 2010 census.
Within the Census Bureau itself, right, we're seeing 2 different numbers. That the population estimates for 2009 are about 76,000 people higher for Brooklyn than the count was for the 2010 decennial census.
Not all areas in Brooklyn are reporting a loss in population. Take Dyker Heights, for instance.
Actually, Dyker Heights is the one area that's had an increase, a slight increase. Bay Ridge had a decrease, but Dyker Heights did have a slight increase.
So why do you think that Bay Ridge was undercounted while your area showed a slight increase?
The only thing I can say is that Dyker is probably a little easier to count in that it's basically 1 and 2 family homes. We do have those condo units, those multiple dwellings, and there's very few what I would call apartment buildings in Dyker Heights, maybe 1 or 2 tops. So I think it's easier maybe to count that type of neighborhood than Bay Ridge, which has a large number of, large buildings and multiple dwellings and so forth.
Mayor Michael Bloomberg's administration plans to file a formal challenge with the Census Bureau. If the city's challenge is successful, the 2010 census numbers will be changed. However, this will not affect congressional representation. Still, changing the population numbers for 2010 is important because it sets a higher baseline for future estimates that the Census Bureau will make until the information from 2020 comes out. And this could mean more federal money for communities that were undercounted.
And hopefully, the folks at the Department of City Planning and the Mayor's office will be able to work with the Census Bureau so that Brooklynites get their fair share of resources.
What will happen if the city loses its appeal?
In theory, if the 2010 census is not accurate and the challenge is not successful, then we would have 10 years of estimates based upon that base count that is inaccurate.
This is Sherry Karabin reporting for Brooklyn Review.
Despite the efforts.
Follow us on Twitter at BK Independent TV.